Okay, so welcome back to our channel, my trader friends. Thank you for clicking this video and I hope that you will learn something from this video tutorial. Okay, so first of all, I want to greet you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are across the globe right now. Okay, so based on our previous video tutorial, we've tackled there all about the if-else statement. In this video, we will be having our discussion regarding the if, this is short for else if, else statement. Again, if-elif-else statement. Okay, so without further ado, let's start our tutorial. Okay, so again, elif here means else if. So this is actually called if-else statement, or in short, if-elif-else statement. Now, this if-elif-else statement is actually used for multiple condition statements. Unlike on our previous video tutorial regarding if-else statement that is actually used only for a single condition statement, this one, if-elif-else statement, is used for multiple condition statements. Okay, so for the syntax, we have here the syntax. If, then the comparison number 1, the first comparison, so therefore we will be having here another comparison operators. So if this is the comparison, then do nothing. Then if that is not satisfied, there is another condition, elif. So elif condition 2, then do nothing. If this condition is still not yet satisfied, we have the third comparison. So elif comparison 3 or elif comparison x. On how many comparison we want it to be, just always write another elif function at the very beginning of the line of the code. Okay, so do something again. Then this can actually 2 elif, 3 elif, 4 elif, depending on your current condition, depending on your scenario, on what scenario you would like to code. And lastly, if all of those comparison statements above, which is still not yet satisfied, if all of those are not yet satisfied, you will now have the last resort, which is else. That's why it is called if-elif-else statement. So for the last resort, else and do something. Okay, so I hope that's clear with you, my friends. Anyway, so for further explanation, for you to be able to grasp the knowledge regarding this statement, let's have here our task. Okay. So for our task, we should now create a college scoring system. I hope you're familiar with the grading system or the scoring system on college based on the table below, which is this one. So the average and the grade. So if you got an average score of, or average grade of 98 to 100, that will reflect as to 1.00, 90 to 97 as 1.5, 85 to 89 as 2.00, 80 to 84 is 2.5, 75 to 79 is what we call this 3.00, and less than 75, this is less than 75, my friends. So sorry for the typographical error. This is again less than 75. The grade will be 5.00. Now, so basically, as you can see, our grade column, we have here the float data type. Okay, so the input for the average will be actually coming from our user. So the user will be the one who will input the average, and we will be the one who will do the coding. And what will be the output on the grade? We will be the one who will code that using the if-elif-else statement, and we will print the corresponding grade, which is this one, from 1 to 5. Okay, so without further ado, let's start our task. We can now go to our Jupyter notebook and start our coding. Okay, So since based on our task, our input will be coming from our user. So let's have here the average variable and input. Let's write here, please enter your average, something like that. Okay, then since again we are having the input function based on our previous video, I hope you already watched it regarding the input function. It is actually considered by the Python to be a string. So since it is a string, we should convert this first into a float. So float, open parentheses and the closing one here. Okay, so now let's run. For the average, let's have, for example, 88.75. So that's it. So the input is now working. Let's now have here the if-elif-else statement. Okay, so if average is less than or equals to 100, let's go back to our PowerPoint. Here we are doing this row 98 to 100 row. So if that is less than or equals to 100, and aside to if-elif-else statement, we can also actually have here our logical operators. And that is the reason why we first learn how the logical operators is used. Specifically, my friends, the logical AND operators, because there is actually two bound, the lower bound and the upper bound, as you can see on our PowerPoint. This is the lower bound and this is the upper bound. So this must be both satisfied. That's why we will be having our logical AND operator. So if average is less than or equals to 100 and average, take note of the spelling, average is greater than or equals to 98, so 98 to 100, we will print grade is 1.00, something like that. Okay, elif, if this is not satisfied, because for example in our case we entered 88.75, so it is not included in the bound of 98 to 100, so we can now have here our elif. So elif average is less than 97, less than 97, or less than or equals 97, and let's check this, 90, our lower bound, and average, let's have your average is greater than or equals to 90, we will print grade is 1.5. Grade is 1.5. Okay, if this conditions is still not met from the input of the user, we can now have again elif, or the else if, elif. Okay, so elif average, our next one, 85 to 89. So average is less than or equals to 89, and average is greater than or equals to 85. We can now print grade is, let's check it, 2.00. 2.00. Okay, so if this is still not yet satisfied, we can now have the elif average is less than or equals to 84, and average is greater than or equals to 80 based on our table here, 80. We can now print grade is 2.5. 5. 80 to 84 is 2.50. Okay? And if this is still not met, we can again have our if. So average is less than or equals to 79, and average is greater than or equals to 75. So we can now print grade is 3.00. So 3.00. So 1, 1.5, 2, 2.53, 1, 1.5, 2. Oh, sorry. This is 2.5. Okay, and 3. Then, as you can see, this, my friends, all those lower than 75, okay, all those lower than 75 will be considered as 5. This is actually still an elif and not else. Later on, we will discuss the else, the closing of our codes. So, elif average, this is not now bounded because 75 lower than 75, which is actually from 74, 73, 72, that will be considered as 5 up to the flooring grade that a student can have. So, average is less than 75. Don't write here equals because 75 will be considered as 5. No, so the equals to 75 is still considered as 3.0. This is what this code is telling us. Okay, so for this last elif that we have right now, average is less than 75. We can now print grade is 5.00. So I'm sorry. So let's have here our backslash first. Okay. I'm sorry, you failed. Let's have for our code to be interactive, sad interaction. Let's have here like this one. I'm so sorry, my friend, you failed. So elif, all of the grades, all of the average grades which is lower than 75 will be having a grade of 5.00, and that is actually failed. And if ever that the user will have an input of negative 75, negative 80, 125 as their average, 150, 0 grade, so that will be actually an invalid grade. So for the invalid grade, that is the possible input of our user that is not stated here on this table. So that will be our else now, or this is actually the last resort. Else, if all of those code coming from the upper part up to this part is not yet satisfied, else our last resort will be to print your input okay, your input is invalid. Okay, so I think that's it for now, our code. Let's try to run it, my friends. I hope this will work. So let's run it. Again, shortcut for run, shift enter for Windows user, and for Mac user, shift return. Okay, so yeah. Okay, EOL, while scanning string literal. Okay, so EOL while scanning string literal. Okay, so this is actually one of the error that is encountered by programmers. We have here the opening, what we call this, opening single quote, and we don't have here, so we should have here. Okay, so let's run it again. So your input is invalid. So this one too, we forgot. Okay, so let's run. Okay, now please enter your average. For example, I am very smart. My average is 99. The output should be 1. Okay, so 99 here is 1. Let's try. Enter. Okay, so grade is 1.00, meaning to say we are correct. Okay, so let's run it again. Let's have, for example, 75.3. So 75.3, the answer must be 75 to 79. That is the bound where our input is actually considered. And the equivalent grade is 3.00. So that will be the output here upon entering. So let's click enter. 3.00. Okay, so let's try now, for example, to have an invalid input. Let's try to enter a average grade of higher than 100. So let's run this again. 120, for example, then enter. Okay, so your input is invalid. That's how, by the way, this is not intended. Okay, so again, let's repeat 120, and that's actually invalid input. Okay, so another one, let's try to have negative input. So please enter your average, negative 80, for example. The user accidentally clicks the negative sign in the keyboard. So let's try to enter. Grade is 5. I'm sorry, you failed. Why? Do you think what is the reason why, my friend? Because actually, negative 80 here is actually satisfied the elif average less than 75. That means negative 80 is less than 75. If we will have an editing on this code, we will try to have end average is greater than or equals to 50. For example, the flooring grade, the lowest grade that a student can have is 50 base. That is a grading system for some other universities, 50 base. So lower than 75 and higher than or equals to 50, that is 5.0. So let's try to have this first. Let's run it. So I forgot to double. Okay, so let's run it. Let's have 55, for example. The answer here must be 5.00. So let's enter. Grade is 5.00. I'm sorry, you failed. Now let's input again the negative 80. Let's see if that will still be considered as 5 or that will now be considered as invalid. So let's enter negative 80. Enter. Okay. So your input is invalid because now negative 80 is not considered as part of this code up to the last code here. So since this is not satisfied, all the code here is not satisfied, it will print the else. Okay, so I hope you get it. It just so happened that a while ago we don't have this coding here. That's why the negative 80 is still, if you can recall your basic mathematics, it is still part of the number line, and negative 80 lower than 0 is still lower than 75. So we need to have this as our part of data validation. Okay, so I think that's it for now, my friends, and I hope you learned something from this video tutorial regarding the if-elif-else statement. So if you learn from this video, comment below. Don't forget the greater than or equals to 50. Because we forgot it actually. Okay, comment below if you learn from this video. Don't forget the greater than or equals to 50. This is actually what we forgot. Okay. Anyway, so again, I hope you learned something from this video. This is again the Engineer Trader, your partner from learning to earning. And as always, my friends, may our trades be great. Bye-bye.